Hey, welcome to Command HQ. I am Brock Verdeen, and I apologize. There was some technical issue with the streaming stuff here. So I wanted to just briefly recap what I talked about last night with Christian Settlemeyer, and then also go into a couple of these Israeli-Gaza situations. And as I mentioned last night, we have Fannie Willis blocking open records requests. Christian Settlemeyer is kind of the cover-up crew and leading that operation. And unfortunately, they're coming up with all kinds of reasons why they can't provide records, and they're trying to say that, the public has to pay a bunch of money for copies, despite the fact that they can send PDFs out. And then also saying that, if the public doesn't like the decision, that they should hire outside counsel, stuff like this, and it can get very costly very quickly. And it's really surprising, actually, the fact that the Attorney General's office and these local municipalities refuse to comply with state law, and then the Attorney General's office refuses to actually enforce the law. So that's kind of the main thrust of this argument. But as I mentioned earlier this morning during this really long live stream, Kristen Settlemeyer has been quarterbacking this coordination between multiple agencies in various states, from a professional responsibility level all the way to these county prosecutors like Fannie Willis. And then they will go after any attorney associated with Trump and then magically leave other political candidates out of the fray. You don't see any attorneys that represent Kathy Hochul, Chuck Schumer, Andrew Cuomo, Biden be disciplined at all, let alone disciplined to the extent that the attorneys that are representing Donald Trump have been hit with. And I think, obviously it's a way to make sure that Donald Trump is defenseless in this entire situation without adequate legal representation. And not as many people are talking about the fact that these agencies get away with blocking data requests as they're getting away with. And there's another issue here where not that many people have FOIA'd the professional responsibility organizations in various states to get records. And they will cite prosecutorial or judicial immunity, even because sometimes they're attached to a state Supreme Court. They get away with anything they want. But let's talk about and shift gears into this, which is, of course, I didn't put it up here. Let me grab it really quickly. This is a tweet from Khaleesi. Israeli occupation forces stole $2.8 million from 5 money exchange companies across the West Bank this morning. They raided the money exchange shops, destroyed their contents, arrested their owners, and confiscated their money and gold. Literally daylight robbery. Okay, so this is another tactic to prevent banks from holding money in Gaza. Typical, right? I mean, talk about stereotypes. I won't even go into that. I don't want to even trigger any anti-Semitic talk, but going after the money exchange companies, you would assume that this is kind of part and parcel to Palestinian families sending money into their loved ones and then having the currency exchanged into a local denomination or something like that. And the fact that they're just so willing, the IDF, to go in here and seize all these assets shows you that this is pretty brutal. And, I'm not a fan of Hamas or ripping down posters of the hostages that Hamas took. I'm biased towards peace. I'm a little biased towards Israel. But, this is beyond the pale. Let's play this little Instagram
Important things you need to understand if you want to know what's happening right now. From its inception, the whole idea of Israel as a country was based on racism. Israel was conceived as a Jewish state, and while there's nothing wrong in principle with Jews having a homeland, the problem is that they insisted that that homeland had to be in Palestine, which already belonged to someone, the Palestinians. The slogan of Israel's founders was a land for a people without a land. But deep down, they all knew that the only way to have a Jewish majority in Palestine, an Arab country, was to expel the Arabs. One of the founders of Israel, Yosef Weitz, wrote, "There's no room in the country for both peoples. There's no way but to transfer the Arabs from here to neighboring countries." Israel was quite literally founded by expelling and massacring hundreds of thousands of Arabs.
Wow. All right, well, so Israel is using this as an excuse to carry out the original policies in which the country was founded on, which is getting rid of everyone else and then taking over the land. But that was sort of this World War II Bretton Woods agreement. I'd have to go back and look at the actual history behind the founding of Israel, but this was the original decision that was
Arabs in a years-long process called the Nakba. And when you found a country based on racial exclusion, you're gonna get
this is Israel, though.
A culture that fosters and celebrates racial exclusion, because countries that commit terrible atrocities rarely acknowledge committing those atrocities, and the presence of Palestinians who remained in Palestine became a constant reminder not only of the violence that founded Israel, but of the constantly looming threat that they might come back and try to reclaim their land. Every day you can find videos coming out of Israel showing Israelis calling for all Arabs to die, insulting the Prophet Muhammad, desecrating mosques, spitting on Christians, mocking and celebrating the murder of Palestinians, committing violent hate crimes against Palestinians, watching Gaza get carpet bombed from a cliffside for entertainment. But don't just go off these anecdotes. Let's look at some of the polls. One poll found that 2/3 of Israeli teens believe Arabs to be less intelligent, uncultured, and violent. It also found that 50% of Israelis wouldn't live in the same building as Arabs, wouldn't befriend Arabs, wouldn't let their children befriend Arabs, and wouldn't let Arabs into their homes. Another poll found that 60% of Israeli Jews want segregation from Arabs. Another poll found that half of Israeli Jews agree with the statement, most Jews are better than most non-Jews because they were born Jews. The poll also found that 88% of Israeli Jews would be disturbed if their son befriended an Arab girl, and 90% would be disturbed if their daughter befriended an Arab boy. This poll found that about half of Israeli high schoolers don't think Arabs should have the right to vote. Another poll showed that almost half of Israeli Jews don't want Arabs teaching their kids. Not only are these views widely held in Israeli society, they're also represented in government, which codifies these sentiments into law. For example, Israel has a law that says if an Israeli marries a Palestinian, or someone from several other regional Arab states, that person isn't allowed to move in with said Israeli. This law was passed in 2003, but it's been renewed every single year since. Israel also doesn't allow interreligious marriage to be performed in the country, which is meant to deter Jews from marrying
I'm not surprised that this is being reported on by some alternative online newspaper called BT Newsroom. I guess I'm surprised by the fact that this kind of stuff has gained so much traction. It says nearly 240,000 likes. It's from October 12th. And this could easily be characterized as very anti-Semitic. And you could pull out these threads of logic and vanquish the arguments pretty quickly. But the fact that they're able to espouse this, especially on a meta Facebook platform like Instagram, and get so many positive likes and comments, and I'm not logged in, so we can't see, I think, the full history of comments. But I'm sure if I read them and if I was able to log in, and if I used some dummy account to do that, we would see a lot of anti-Semitism.
Jews. In 2018, Israel passed the nation-state law, a law which has constitutional.
But they're projecting this image, I think, that Israel is racist. Everyone knows that following World War II, there was this Jewish state established because Jews wanted Israel back, and that this would be a long fight. And this has been the policies that were set about originally when Israel was founded. Nothing is new about what they're saying. Palestinians have always been barred to some degree from functioning normally in Israeli society.
Status, which says the right to exercise.
And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that this is not new information by any means.
As national self-determination, i.e. have rights, is the exclusive right of Jews, no one else. There's also the Nakba law, which makes it illegal to acknowledge the Nakba, the expulsions of Palestinians that were needed to found Israel. This would be like passing a law to make it illegal to talk about indigenous genocide or slavery in America. There's also the Admissions Committee law, which basically allows towns to operate panels that deny applications for entry.
Well, that's just like New York, isn't it? That's like these committees in these tenements where people buy condos, and then you have to go through the board in order to get in there. I mean, this is Brooklyn right here.
Based on socio-cultural compatibility, which essentially just legalizes racist housing discrimination. In Israel, advocating genocide of Palestinians doesn't hurt your chances of holding a high position in government. And in fact, in many cases, it helps. In 2014, Israeli lawmaker Ayelet Shaked wrote an unhinged rant on Facebook, calling all Palestinians enemy combatants and saying their mothers should be killed for giving birth to, quote, little snakes. The next year, she was appointed Minister of Justice by Benjamin Netanyahu. Itamar Ben-Gvir, a lifelong admirer of Meir Kahane, an Arab exterminationist, a man who praised a Jewish settler who killed a Palestinian for throwing a rock at him, a man who was famously acquitted after being criminally charged for chanting death to Arabs, is Israel's current Minister of National Security. He's not—
I mean, wow.
Not some fringe figure either. He's one of the most popular politicians in Israel right now. In the last few days, Israel's been working hard to cast itself as the victim of hatred, the victim of terrorism, the victim of anti-Semitism, that they have no choice but to lay siege to Gaza. But underneath this carefully concocted victim complex is a racist, Jewish supremacist state that's been trying to finish the job that the Nakba started for decades. And really, this shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. After all, they're literally cutting off water and electricity.
You know, here's the thing. The more you hear this, the more you realize how many of these Arab states and the peoples that live there hate Israel, right? And not to lessen, I think, any of the damage that any of these groups felt by any of the various conflicts or wars that they've had, whether that's Lebanon, Hezbollah, Hamas, West Bank, the Palestinians, both in the West Bank and in other parts of Israel. Instead of, everybody knew that giving this parcel of land back to Israel and creating the Jewish state, why not? And I'm serious about this, you know, and why didn't the Western political groups that got together after World War II, why didn't they think of something similar, of course, for Palestinians? Hey, here is here are houses in a part of Syria or something. Why didn't they think of some alternate solution to give Palestinians a chance to basically have something better, an incentive structure set up to allow them to travel to a new location and live well, to avoid this conflict altogether? You would think, of course, and the real reason that never happened is because of money. And no one wanted to pay for it. But as you're seeing now, and I started off this before I had some technical difficulties with the stream, because I used an RTMP. I don't even want to get into it, but I started the stream before I had those issues, talking about not this one. No, I get all when stuff like this. Okay, this one. This was an NBC News article talking about, and it's very misleading, talking about how there's only 7,500 immigrants in here, and again, using the term migrants instead of illegal immigrants, and they're both illegal in Mexico as well as this country. And if you click into the article, what you'll see is they'll start saying that there's thousands of immigrants that are coming up. And then you read some of the comments. I mean, this is a real crisis, and it is building towards World War III because it's testing the limits of social services in this country, and it's going to create a diplomatic situation where the U.S. is unable to put out all these fires around the world, and then World War III will eventually build, and then these coalitions will form into larger allied groups, and then boom, World War III will commence. And it's happening slowly, but then it will happen pretty suddenly. But getting back to what's been prophesized, which is that this World War III situation will probably come together in Armageddon in Israel. You know, where was the thought process then about having some incentive structure in place to prevent this inherent conflict between conflicting policies in Israel and Palestine? Because in the long run, it would be far less costly to have those incentives in place versus everything else we're seeing. Even just the cost of weaponry, these tanks, these Abrams tanks are millions and millions of dollars a piece. And it goes back to money. It goes back to money. Who's getting paid? Who's making money off the deal? I don't like listening to this, but I want to play the rest
Their
of it.
generals talk openly about flattening Gaza and killing the animals, meaning Palestinians. It's obvious their goal is genocide.
So I didn't have a chance to read some of the comments last night on a couple of these New York Post articles, and I want to do that very quickly. I want to stream for about another 40 minutes until 11 o'clock Central. And this article is about Lauren Boebert and her changing districts because she can't win in the 3rd district in Colorado. I don't know if this is, I said redistricting, but I don't even think it's redistricting. I was wrong. I think it's just the fact that the race was so close. She ran against Adam Frisch a couple years ago, and she only won by something like 550 votes, give or take a few votes there. I have also noticed that the New York Post has implemented kind of this new moderation scheme. And it used to be where you could pretty much say most things. And it relied on the community to report something if it was incendiary or if it was potentially, you know, illegal. And that worked just fine. But now they put in the sort of censoring situation where it censored me a couple times and I wasn't doing anything inappropriate. This new New York Post moderation app is abysmal. I can't even use the legitimate word for a political candidate who seeks election in an area where they have no local connections. It's funny that the News Corp companies and their talking heads spent years complaining about moderation on sites like Facebook, and they have succeeded in creating something exponentially worse than social media censorship that ever exists. Now, that's not true. I mean, it's just a minor, little annoying thing, okay? It's not that big of a deal. You can still, if you reword your stuff, it's still visible. Social media companies were outright banning people and preventing them from speaking altogether. This is just kind of one of those annoying things. While I don't think that the New York Post should implement something like this, I think what they're trying to do is comply with EU requirements. And that's why they brought in some of this moderation. So it is tragic, yes. And yeah, okay, well, maybe they're having I don't comment very often. I think I've commented on like one article in the past 3 months. Vive111 says, almost every comment I post gets rejected. I did an experiment using a bunch of words that were already in the thread and I got rejected. Go figure. Okay, so they're having different experiences than I have. So maybe it's worse. I don't know. It's not everyone. They crack down on individuals after they've been reported for being abusive. Maybe show a modicum of restraint. How hard is that? You know, just being a normal human with the minimum of compassion for others. Well, this is an asshole. See, they're not even talking about this Bobier stuff. Okay, let's talk about Bobier. You are really, in speaking about Bobier, you are really just too young to represent people in any district based on the way that you have represented yourself this past year. Some time off would be warranted to work on yourself and healing time with your family. You have plenty of time to represent others after some time away. Good for her. I wish she would run in my district. She hasn't done anything for her district except make them the laughing stock of the country. The affair in the movie theater was cringe. Theodore Johnson says, it's a shame she has so little faith in her ability to win re-election. Dietz, I would vote for her. Steve P, still hot, still has my vote. And as long as the squad is there supporting Hamas, she's good enough for me. I like that. I agree. Jack quickly, he's not busy complaining about censorship on the New York Post. He's got time to leave other comments. Maybe she can run to represent Trump's supermax self. Again, troll. Jack quickly is an idiot. Tyler Nunn. I dislike this woman so much. She's an embarrassment to her constituents, her family, and frankly, the United States. Liar, cheater, fake Christian, unintelligent. At least she's fighting. Not only is she a laughing stock, but she fails to realize she's the joke. All the while gallivanting around, giving the rest of us conservatives a bad name. Well, here's the deal. No one's perfect. And, I don't know if anybody can be a fake Christian. People make mistakes. That's the whole part of being part of humanity, whether you're Christian, Jewish, or anything else. Unintelligent. I mean, look, Lauren Bobier is very articulate. She's got a lot of communication skill. Now, sometimes her logic might be questioned. And I agree that the whole movie theater cringe situation, considering the fact that there were families there and there were potentially kids, was wrong. And maybe when you're young and you're in your early 20s and doing something like that, maybe that's different. But she's a congresswoman and she should not be engaging in anything like that. Plus, she's kind of still married, I think, or separated. I'm not sure. It was inappropriate. And here's the thing. I'm suddenly remembering, and I don't want to cause her any distress. I really don't. But there was a woman that I grew up with, and she became, I believe, a member of the state house, or she was a state senator. And she got caught in a vehicle. She was married to a pastor, and she got caught in a vehicle. And this is all allegations in a news article, so who knows what is true or what's not. But there was a statement, a police report. And this is ridiculous too. A city cop or a park police or something like that found them in the vehicle and they were making out in the back seat. Oh, big deal. Okay. They were having an affair. It's not that big of a deal and it's not important. It's really none of anyone's business. They were doing it privately. Okay, the park was closed. They made a little mistake. At least, it was private. And then you have someone here like Lauren Bobier doing this in a public theater. Completely different. And then, this woman ended up resigning, and I don't think she should have resigned at all, knowing what I know. But anyways, Hillary Stone. Can she take Gates and MTG with her? Oh, and also Trump and DeSantis. It will make the world a much better place. Tony Almonte. She is not worthy of representing anyone. Larry Thomas. Airhead, no matter where she runs. Look, I mean, she won a race. It's more than this guy, right? Probably, if I ran, I'm pretty, I'm a dominant force when it really comes down to it, but I'll do anything to win as long as it's ethical and legal. And I have no problem exposing people, but I have a lot of skill deficiencies in specific areas. And you see people like Lauren Bobier. I mean, look, she won. History buff. I heard she serves up a fine HJ. Schnick Ave. Carpet bagged in the fourth won't work for her. Jotato Zidane. Bobier. Sula 91. Another useless performance artist politician. Okay, so the comments are overwhelmingly negative. These are from kind of conservative leaning people. Todd Phillips. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Bye-bye, honey. Jessie Strong. She's going to end up flipping 2 seats. Gotta love it. Hey, I like this. This is an interesting comment. What if she actually did that? I mean, then they would call Lauren Bobier brilliant. If Adam Frisch is running against her in the 3rd district, which I think is the case, and they bring in another Republican, and the Republican wins the 3rd district, and then the 4th district goes to Bobier, boom. All right, the other article I didn't get a chance to read the comments on, and let's refresh this so we get the comments as they stand right now, even though they'd probably be loaded if I clicked on this. Okay. Brian, when the Union was formed at the 1787 Constitutional Convention, the representatives of each state understood their states to be preeminent, and only agreed to come to a common understanding for the greater good, with the full expectation that, quote, those powers not expressly given to the national government are retained by the states, unquote. If you asked a representative of Virginia, who are you? He would never have answered, I'm an American. Instead, he would have said, I'm a Virginian. Today, we have no concept of that with the internet and TV and mass communication. But those things did not exist then. You were who you were based on where you lived. Your values and your loyalty were defined by your state. The southern states in particular retained their identity based on where they lived. My eyes, sorry. And then it goes off screen when I zoom in. When they felt their identities threatened, they understandably said, you want no part of this anymore. And they fully expected that this was understood by all. Today, if you enter into an agreement with someone and you feel that that agreement is undermined, you want the freedom to withdraw from it. That's what they did. Well, I don't know if I agree with all of that, but I will say that you used to have more of a connection to your local community. And growing up, if someone was from Minnesota, or if you were from Minnesota, or if they were from the same state or an ethnic group, and you saw them, you were proud of that. And I don't think that people feel the same way today, especially younger people, because we do have the internet, and you build relationships with people that are in different parts of the country, and you have less and less of a connection to those around you, aside from your own family. But I think federalism and then like withdrawing from this agreement so an individual state could then secede. You could look at the Constitution and how federalism was formed, Federalist Papers, which were kind of the basis of the Constitution in many ways. It was never meant to allow individual states to decide on their own that, hey, we're not jiving with what's going on. But we've reached a saturation point today where now I think a lot of people in different states, and I would be one of them, to say, like if Texas wants to succeed because they have their own port, they have their own electrical grid and stuff like that, it's very possible. And the state Supreme Courts, like Colorado decision that was highly radical, just accelerates that issue. Two causes: civil war, states' rights, especially regarding economic policies, and slavery, which created moral and political differences. Haley is not avoiding the slavery issue. She's just clueless about history. I don't know. I mean, look, I'm not, I know a lot about some history, and, like I don't have everything inventoried and articulated in my head that I have an answer like that, what the cause of the Civil War is. But the cause of the Civil War were economic differences, essentially like this sanction situation that the North was doing to the South, and a soft economic embargo through unwillingness to trade with the South, through sanctions, through tariffs, and through just a genuine dislike of anything coming from the South, the cotton, the agriculture. And then I think really the linchpin of the whole thing was slavery, and the fact that they were using labor that was seen as extremely low cost, if not free, And so then it became a moral issue. But to be honest with you, we have the same issue today. We have these indentured servants coming in from mostly India, and they're working in various industries, IT being a main industry that they're working in, and they're getting paid and they're being abused by third-party vendors, but they're not getting paid as much as they should. But at the same time, the Indians are being used as a weapon to replace American workers and Canadian workers too. And the indentured servitude nature of it, and you can go back to India or whatever, we have airfare, and we have so much technology now where technically it's not slavery. You're not living on a plantation, but it's almost like that. Because, okay, get on a plane, go back to India, give up your ability to have a H-1B visa in the US or have a green card in the US, and have a chance to make a lot of money. But it's like as close to modern day slavery as you possibly can get without it actually being called slavery. We have the same economic situation set up today, but it is sanitized so that they can get away with it. And the other part of this is that American workers, it's not just IT, but let's say you're an American citizen. I'll use myself as an example. You go to college, you get a 4-year degree, and then you get a graduate degree, you study computer science, and then you pay X number of dollars to do that. In a lot of families here, parents or grandparents pay the cost of university. In my case, I paid the cost myself. And Americans are graduating with high levels of student debt, huge burden, and then they're shipping the H-1B Indians in who have no debt, but they are living with very little wage because these third parties are abusing them and siphoning money off the top. So both Indians are being mistreated. Both parties are being mistreated. Indians are being mistreated. Americans are being mistreated. And it's building towards this, and it's the solution is very easy. Is you have a controlled flow of Indians coming in, and you lessen it. And you have more available jobs for Americans, and you make it much easier. And then you reduce that barrier of entry, so you no longer need this high student debt. And then the American worker can then buy houses, provide for their family. And then eventually the economy starts to stabilize. These are very easy solutions, but the people in control of government and the billionaires who are making hand over fist off of these policies don't want that. And that's why they're creating this conflict. The Civil War was about secession, not slavery. The South properly regarded the Republican Party as an existential threat to slavery, just as it is an existential threat today to those who believe. God, my eyes suck. I gotta zoom in, sorry. To those who believe skin color to be important, so secession was about slavery, but the North didn't have to fight. It could simply have let the South go, as not a few folks advocated if today California wanted to succeed. Can you imagine anyone from Texas volunteering to fight to keep them in the country? The North was willing to fight to preserve the country. It was not willing to fight to abolish slavery. One has to question the motives of anyone who asks a question about events 165 years in the past. The great irony is that the only people who would think to pose such a question are almost certainly every bit as obsessed with skin color as the folks who defended slavery. Yep. Who ran these southern states? Democrats. Who ended slavery? Republicans. Which state founded the Republican Party? Wisconsin. Where was Abraham Lincoln initially inaugurated from a primary standpoint? Wisconsin, when he got the Republican nomination. I guess that's technically not, inaugurated, but he was supported by Republicans in Wisconsin. So I'm wrong about that. I grew up in New Jersey, and we learned about the Civil War in 8th grade in the mid-70s. My social studies teacher taught it as the whole states' rights things, which was a surprising reason for someone like me. I don't know. Maybe I need to get, I feel like I'm blind here. Okay, so he's saying it's a states' rights issue. He's saying that the Civil War was caused by a states' rights issue, that certain states should have had the ability to enact slavery in their state, which, of course, is wrong. The cause of the U.S. Civil War depends on who you ask. Like the characters in the movie Rashomon, people will always answer the question with their own subjective interest in mind. Southerners will usually say the war was about preserving the Union rather than slavery because they don't want to link their ancestors with the slave trade. I don't know if that's true. Republican establishment types and Democrats will usually say the war was about slavery rather than preserving the Union because they have a negative view of rural people. I don't know if that's true either. I think it's just a matter of optimizing. It's an easy answer just to say that the Civil War was created by slavery. It's easy to say that. It's quick. Whatever you perceive as a cause, the conditions that led to it are more or less the same today. See? Oh, wow. Agreement with me. Rural and urban Americans are at odds with each other. Botch that. Rural and urban Americans are at odds with each other over... Okay, he botched it. Never mind. Racial issues and the role of government. I think this is an over generalized statement. I don't think that's really the issue that we have today. I think we have an issue where we have a corrupt government, where they're persecuting people for non-crimes. Meanwhile, they're engaging in massive level number of crimes themselves and invading this country, destroying the currency, creating world wars. And the scale of the disaster today compared with the cause of the Civil War in the 1800s is significantly different. It's in fact much worse today. When you bring in the fact that there are world wars being potentially created here. The question was a carefully laid landmine by Haley's opposition to make sure she stepped up. God, my eyes. I can't read. Opposition to make sure she stepped on it. Technically, she was correct. That central to the war was the federal versus state right. Sound familiar today with a topic like abortion? I don't think that's driving anything. Slavery was absolutely one of the key components. Central to the South's argument that the federal government was overstepping its power over states' sovereignty. The southern states went rogue and rebelled against what they felt was government overreach with slavery, taxation of cotton, and economic disparity. Do I think Haley is any less qualified to be president because she didn't give a 30-minute in-depth dissertation on the cause of the Civil War? No. She should have answered that they asked President Biden and the Democrats, since they were the party at the time. Okay, let's read just a few more. Here's Barbara Balian. Nikki Haley sounded dumb. That wasn't even a tough question to answer. If she was afraid of losing the Confederate flag supporters' vote, she should have briefly mentioned slavery before pivoting to other issues happening in the mid-19th century. Now, based on her stupid answer, she'll retain the Confederate vote and be seen as an idiot by everyone else. Okay, well, it's rude to call half this country Confederates. You know, particularly given the fact that we just went over the fact that Republicans coming from the North were the ones who solved the slavery issue, prevented slavery from continuing to be used in this country. And now most of these southern states are Republicans who believe in the same thing and are not racist. Whereas you have a lot of people in the North, especially places like Minnesota, who are incredibly racist, and are Democrats. But, you know, this is one of these nanny mommy Democrats who believes that abortion being turned into a states' rights issue is taking away their fundamental freedoms. And again, like anybody who wants to support abortion, the murdering of babies, I think they need to go to therapy for one. Two, it's evil to even support anything like that. Abortion should be outlawed on a federal basis. That's one thing that I've always been pretty firm about. I mean, maybe growing up I didn't really know enough about it, but once you kind of gain these firm convictions about life, I mean, I just don't know how you would want to allow for something like this, because there's plenty of people in this country who would adopt a child. And anyways. The argument goes on ad nauseum. It is kept alive by those who have an axe to grind and benefit from upheaval. The problem on both sides of the issue, states' rights versus slavery, is it is contested in modern terms. You cannot judge history by modern standards, ergo history. The South has an agrarian society that needed slave labor to produce cotton, tobacco, sugar, etc., while the North was a mechanized society. This does not make slavery right, and by today's standards, it is intolerable, but the South's ability to produce more trade would have rendered a whole part of our nation subservient to another. Another factor was that in Congress there was equality amongst the states, with border states like Missouri and Kansas entering the fraternity as free states would have rendered the southern states' voting rights in Congress meaningless. Lots of reasons for the CW. What is CW? I'm not sure. Congress? Civil War, duh. Lots of reasons for the Civil War, but slavery tops the list because it is convenient and incessantly stirs the pot. The Civil War is about the threat of secession, more about slavery, but Haley is not about that. But Haley is not that smart anyway. Okay. Maybe it's my contacts. I don't know. I'm having trouble seeing this lettering. I wonder if you can change the size of lettering, the font size here. Here's the other piece of this, right? So we have this multiculturalism experiment in the US. And a lot of the upheaval and stability issues that we're having in society today are a result of bringing in so many different groups of immigrants and then forcing them to live in communities where they don't have job support, and then they're being used to replace American workers, and then families are being destroyed here through various levers of power, whether that's through the judicial system, whether that's through an erosion of economic viability, stuff like that. we're under attack. And you look at, going back to our early discussion about Israel and these Arabs, the Palestinians, accusing Israel of being racist because they want to get Arabs out of Israel, which has been a known policy for really since Israel was founded. Israel, I wouldn't characterize as a stable country, but it has periods of stability when it has less ethnic upheaval from Palestinians or Arabs coming in. Not to say there's plenty, there's even Palestinians serving in the IDF. Not everyone living in Israel is Jewish, but you have Christians serving the IDF as well. But there is this this thread. But you look at Europe, and a lot of the countries that have formed are ethnically closely connected for many years, and wars seem to break out when you are introducing new ethnic groups. You're seeing that now in Italy, you're seeing that in France, you're seeing it in Belgium, you're now seeing it in Denmark, you're seeing it in Sweden, Norway. No, the Scandinavian countries themselves are very stable, and they've had some immigration, but by and large, they really haven't until recently. And they let in a bunch of Arabs, Somalians, Syrians, and suddenly crime skyrocketed. And there's been a lot of people complaining online. Peter Sweden is a Twitter account that constantly complains about this. I think Elon Musk has replied to him a few times. So you can see where this is going. They're trying to create a war in this country, not based on the differences between Americans who are born here and have lived here for hundreds of years. They're trying to create a war by introducing new ethnic groups in the same way that those groups have created divisions in Europe, which have sparked various wars. That, I think, is kind of the main thrust of this agenda, this initiative that they're pulling on this country right now. And just got some news from an anonymous source. Let's pull this up. Never mind. I'm really surprised, though, that they're pre-programming the Civil War narrative. They're really honing in on the Nikki Haley statement. And maybe it's because Nimrata is her real name, because she is the daughter of immigrants, and she is kind of part of this still minority, which is becoming a majority in this country, Indians. And their predictive programming and planting the Civil War narrative, I think, in the mainstream to start making more people think about it and to tell you what they're trying to spark. Nikki is Nimrata's real middle name. That's why she tried to make her husband change his name from William to Michael, because Michael was his middle name. And she was trying to change her husband into herself, effectively, right? What did Joe Biden say 46 minutes ago? Oh, see how easy it is just to say, oh yeah, the cause was slavery. That was part of it, but it's more complicated than that. a complex answer and a little bit of massaging is needed. But I think, if anything, she wasn't prepared for it. And this is a question, considering that she's from South Carolina, she should have been prepared for. She grew up in the U.S., knows a lot about the Civil War, but she's got to have it ready to go. All right. I'm just going to quickly scan here, see if there's anything else. Oh, wow, look at this. So immediately after Antony Blinken goes and meets with Mexican officials about the border crisis, we get the Mexican government using bulldozers to clear the tent encampments. Let me zoom this out. Migrants at the encampment in Matamoros, which borders Brownsville, Texas, first moved into the area in late 2022. Mexican officials used bulldozers to clear migrant tent camp at U.S. border.
States have seceded. The United States Army.
This is the trailer for the movie Civil War. I think it's going to be released just in theaters. Is it a Netflix movie? No. Okay. Let's play this.
Ramps up activity. The White House issued warnings to the Western forces as well as the Florida Alliance.
The three-term president assures the uprising will be dealt with swiftly.
Let me know if you want to try anything on.
Are you guys aware there's like a pretty huge civil war going on all across America?
We just try to stay out. With what we see on the news, seems like it's for the best.
What does that tell you about these millennial women, childless millennial women who watch the mainstream media and run bullshit retail shops like this and want to stay out of everything? It's got your favorite actress, Kirsten Dunst, in it.
America. The so-called Western forces of Texas and California have suffered a very great defeat at the hands of the United States military.
Mr. President.
I'm kind of curious why, and everybody has picked this out as well in comments, that they included California as part of this Texas coalition, rebel force here. And I wonder why. I wonder if it's because both Texas and California have access to the ocean, or whether it's because whether California also has parts of its own sovereign electrical grid. I don't know.
Now, do you regret the use of airstrikes against American citizens?
We're moving to D.C. today.
We need to go down there.
They shoot journalists on sight in the Capitol. Every instinct in me said.
So, did you hear that? In this trailer, they said that they, quote, shoot journalists on sight in this trailer. That's what they said. Okay, again, this is from the trailer. I'm not saying anything that, but, so I think they're trying to pre-program or do some predictive programming about the fact that, the government is effectively silencing journalists. And, clearly that's happening today.
This is death. Bloody.
Every time I survived a war zone, I thought I was sending a warning home. Don't do this. But here we are.
There's some kind of misunderstanding here. What? Well, you're American, okay?
Okay. What kind of American are you?
You don't know?
The Western forces will reach the White House on July 4th.
Oh my God.
Get in the car! Get in the car!
You're gonna hang back.
I'm
not hanging back.
One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty.
Really puts Lincoln's speech into perspective. One nation under God. When you see a trailer like this and you experience what this country is going through right now.
And justice for all.
Go, 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 go!
God bless America.
So there's some symbolism there because they're flying over, excuse me, parts of Washington, D.C., like the Lincoln Memorial, and the Washington Monument and stuff like that. So they're really kind of trying to put a lot of symbolism about the Civil War into this trailer here, using the modern tools of war like these Black Hawk helicopters and drones and airstrikes. You know, this is a massively retweeted story a couple weeks ago, and it's amazing too that there's still a bunch of people commenting even a few days ago on this. It's coming in 2024, one way or another. I think, with all the division in this country and the persecution and the corruption, it's a bad recipe. It's deliberate. And I think people need to start thinking of solutions and exposing as much as they possibly can right now. And hopefully it doesn't happen. God forbid it ever does. I think the only thing that can bring us out of this is God's guidance, and being as pacifist as you possibly can, being nonviolent, you know, if you experience anything that's even remotely close to that, just run away, walk away. Who cares about your personal possessions? Just run. There's no reason to ever get involved in any of this. Similar to the whole J6 thing, it was a setup from the very start. There was no reason to ever go. And you know, this has been prophesized thousands of years ago. When there's talk of something external and going out and actually defending yourself. So it's different defending your family if someone's coming into your home. Of course, you have to defend your family, but going out and actively participating in any of this is an entirely different concept. And that's why I think pacifism is so effective. Let's look at this TikTok really quick. This is from Clayton Morris.
Are there things that you're scared to cover? You're sitting there saying, wow, this is like soul crushing, like to the point where like it really scares you in your soul.
Yes, there are two. One is the 2020 election. I think there may be some merit to some of the wildest possible claims about that election. The second thing that
see if I can zoom out a little bit here. No, I can't.
bothers me is the UFO story. There are parts of that story that I do not understand at all that are really, really, really dark. It's so dark that I haven't told my wife about it. You know, parts of the government don't want you to know about it, but part of it is the public can't deal with it. It's too far out.
Play it again. I hate this about TikTok.
Are there things that you're scared to cover? You're sitting there saying, wow, this is like soul crushing, like to the point where like it really scares you in your soul.
Yes, there are two. One is the 2020 election. I think there may be some merit to some of the wildest possible claims about that election. The second thing that bothers me is the UFO story. There are parts of that story that I do not understand at all that are really, really, really dark. It's so dark that I haven't told my wife about it. You know, parts of the government don't want.
Okay. Tucker Carlson is saying there's parts of the story that are really dark. Which parts? Because I guess whatever I've seen, and I haven't really paid too much attention to it, It just seems like they're talking about some of the surveillance footage where these crafts move really quickly and they defy the laws of physics to go in, zoom out, whatever. I don't see any darkness other than the fact that this stuff was sealed and unavailable to the public for such a period of time. And I wouldn't even call that highly dark. That's just general operating procedure by the U.S. government.
Don't want you to know about it, but part of it is the public can't deal with it. It's too far out.
I would agree, I think, with Tucker in some respects there, that the public can't really deal with it. And the other thing is people don't really care. Someone like me, who I believe that I'm probably way more stubborn and realistic. I don't like fantasy. I don't like anything that is not directly tied to reality. It's hard for me to believe. And so when I hear this UFO shit, I tune out immediately. I don't want to, I'm not into the whole, I'm not even into space, really. I don't even like hearing about NASA. Not that I don't believe it, it's just that I don't care and I don't want to, it doesn't jive with me, all right? But I want to know, I think, specifically what Tucker Carlson is citing when he's saying there's parts of this that are really dark, because I don't know. But I think what this is building towards is World War III. And it's going to start probably with some civil conflict in this country, unfortunately. And it's building towards the civil war in this country, especially given the fact that Tucker Carlson, when he was at Fox News, was kind of restrained and unable to talk about some of the voter fraud that took place during 2020.
Are there things that you're scared to...
And then the overall voting fraud, which was COVID itself, forcing all these mail-in ballots that gave rise to ballot stuffing, particularly in Georgia.
Cover, you're sitting there saying, wow, this is like soul crushing, like to the point where like it really scares you in your soul.
Yes, there are two. One is the 2020 election. I think there may be some merit to...
And everybody cites the same thing, which I also observed that night in Wisconsin, which is I was watching the vote count and Trump was up by, I think, a couple 100,000 votes. I went to bed, I think, around 12 that night, and I woke up 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, and the vote count had changed dramatically. Yeah, exactly like this. Like, it went straight up vertical. And it's not physically or scientifically possible for that to happen. And then 99% of the votes that came in from Milwaukee that were counted were all votes for Biden. Even in Milwaukee, heavily Democrat-run area that's been turned to shit over the past 50 years. And I don't even know that much about Milwaukee. I've been there a couple times, and every time I've been there, I've had really, really bad experiences. It's not possible, even in Milwaukee, to have that much difference in votes for Biden and votes for Trump. I mean, I'm thinking Milwaukee's probably 60% Democrats. You'd have maybe 60% votes for Biden, 40% for Trump. Even if you said, okay, 35%, 65%, but 99% all for Biden. And then you had videos come out later where there was stuff in ballots, or they were definitely up to some kind of shenanigan in Milwaukee, or shenanigans in Milwaukee. Yeah, so, all right, I'm gonna turn this off. Well, we have some interesting stuff come out of Wisconsin here. Wisconsin lacrosse chancellor unanimously fired after filming online porn videos with wife, quote, abhorrent. Wow. UW lacrosse. Name is Dr. Gao. His first name, Joe Gao. Oh, they put them on OnlyFans. Interesting. Oh, yeah. Getting funding from the Mayo Clinic. The Mayo Clinic is really close to La Crosse, probably 35 miles away. Crosse is right over the border from Minnesota. Interesting. Oh, wow. There's a lot of comments on this one. Let's read just a few of them. Dr. Gao also led efforts to redesign curricula, strengthen shared governance, and promote highly inclusive and diverse campus communities from the bio on the university website. Is there anyone left who can't be in any doubt that our university leaderships have lost the plot? They're talking about DEI, highly inclusive and diverse campus communities. Well, I think they're too busy wanting to exploit tax dollars to, you know, go to cocktail parties, bang their wife, create porn videos, then actually think through a lot of these policies and step up and do what's right. And, you know, they don't want to create controversy because that's antithetical to these universities at this point. Interesting, you know, I don't live super close to La Crosse, but I have worked in La Crosse before. And one of the previous companies that I worked for, Train, was founded in La Crosse. And I had to travel to their corporate campus, I think, or they had a different office set up because of their corporate campus was kind of whatever. But you would think that this kind of news would trickle up here, a couple hundred miles away. It hasn't. Rocket Pack says, I live in this area, and none of the local news have mentioned why he is resigning. Interesting. Interesting. And why is that? I'm actually incredibly insulted by the fact that these local newspapers and the local news station, La Crosse, is his own local news affiliate, a couple of them. And if they haven't, I'm 100 miles away, or not 100 miles, a little bit more than that, but I haven't heard anything. I'm like 150 miles away. And some of that stuff just gets pushed into my stream on Google News. It's amazing how much cover these people run. So, like, what is the scam that they're running? And why are they constantly covering for the establishment here? I think it's because they don't want to overturn the tables of DEI, and there's some other back channel money deal going on where I think these local communities, La Crosse isn't super big. They get a lot of the funding from the university there. It's a college town, but it's also been commercialized. So there's some industry in La Crosse, but some of the industry has moved out. Like I mentioned, Train used to be housed there, and then you had the globalists come in and move it to Dublin, Ireland, and then Ingersoll Rand bought it. And then, there's a public YouTube channel where Train built a building energy app that I led the development on for a period of time. And we had, well, I can't go into it, but I have on my LinkedIn, I have the public YouTube video, which they've publicly reported on. So then I can link to it because it's all public. But yeah, so anyways, industry has somewhat, these parasite corporations have come in and extracted wealth from these local communities. And Train was a company founded by Norwegian immigrants, James Train, Reuben Train. And the wealth has effectively been stolen. There was another company that I'm aware of. It was a huge software company in La Crosse. And they built an insurance platform for military veterans, active duty and veterans, mostly actually active duty. I'm forgetting the name off the top of my head, but it was bought by United Health out of Minnetonka, Eden Prairie, Minnesota. United Health is the largest health insurance company in the world. And it was originally kind of a insurance carrier that had bought group health, and then they turned it into a larger group of clinics. They built, bought other companies. And when Obamacare came out, they made tons of money. And they bought this little insurance provider in La Crosse. And they built a bunch of these insurance portals. So they kind of basically turned it more into a software company. Extracted as much wealth from that as possible, and then brought it up to this corporate extraction engine, very abusive, that United Health runs, right? And then they will replace all the American workers with H-1B Indians. If you walk into, and then they have derived companies from United Health so that they can sort of obfuscate what they're actually doing. But they have a campus in Eden Prairie where they have a huge technology branch. Oh, and then they'll have 25, 27-year-old women who are directors in IT, despite the fact that a lot of the engineers, if they're male and they're 45 and they have 25, 30 years of experience, and they wouldn't even be able to get an interview for a directorship. But you have 25-year-old women coming in there with 2 years of experience, and suddenly they're managing everything. Anyways, I'm going on a tangent here, but effectively all of that wealth in these smaller communities has then been kind of like parasitically extracted by these corporations in a very abusive manner. And so I think the local media doesn't want to create controversies because they know they have so little there. The industry has been so beleaguered and so run down by Fortune 500 companies, and there's more Fortune 500 companies in Minneapolis, I think, than any other major city, which is remarkable. You have Best Buy, General Mills, Target, just a bunch, Hormel, Cargill, it's the largest private company in the world. Welcome to the 2023 media. This does not fit with what they want you to know. Apologies for you having to live there. It's a beautiful area. It's right on the river. It's right on the Minnesota River. Not really. It's pretty quiet and peaceful here. Yep. People love it. Well, this person is not familiar with the area because it's really Minnesota, even though it is in Wisconsin, it's kind of Minnesota. Alma is pretty close down there. I used to go into Wisconsin when I was in college because at the time there was a kind of a difference and I was cheap with state sales tax and I'd buy stuff. Ooh, there's some mean people commenting. Shamrock 26. University of Wisconsin, a public school? Seems to be a constitutional violation here. The guy and his wife, ooh, this is kind of an interesting comment. The guy and his wife make porn on their own time, not using state resources, not mentioning the school's name. The First Amendment prohibits the government, in this case the school, from abridging his speech and expression. In essence, he is being punished by the government for exercising his constitutional rights. Yep, another brick taken from our constitutional foundation. It's an interesting comment. I agree that society can't have it both ways. So I hope the contracts these people are hired under make it clear that side porn jobs are unacceptable. Otherwise, he really should go ahead and sue. Mitch Cumstein. Ooh, fitting name for a comment like this. There may be a morals clause in his contract. Oh, good point. This guy sounds like an attorney, huh? Eternal Tech. Depending on the way they are worded, morality clauses can be problematic. For example, is having relations with your wife immoral? Does this become immoral because it was recorded? From an objective standpoint, recording people who have adult relations harms no one as long as everyone involved consents. Spelled incorrectly. GF. Okay, now we finally know where the line is that we can get a college professor fired. Odd. In my line of work, the line is drawn in a much different place. Well, this is Wisconsin. There's conservative local family values there. Even though La Crosse is a fairly politically liberal town, Wisconsin and Minnesota is pretty conservative socially. Aside from the metro areas where you have these pro-Hamas idiots protesting. I think this is probably the best comment of the day, though. Here from Shamrock. JF, thanks, Clarence Darrow. I'll take it from here. This is funny. Mar SQ. If a pro-Hamas person was uploading terrorist propaganda to YouTube under a pseudonym while the president of a private Ivy League institution, would you be okay with Congress, i.e. the government, stepping in to call his or her resignation for firing? Now, I don't know. This actually is... Look, I mean, we live, especially in the Midwest, where population is declining in some areas, and then it's increasing with respect to immigrants coming in and replacing the population and the workforce. There's something to be said, though, about celebrating a chancellor who's willing to at least be espousing the belief that we should have more kids. I think you can safely say that. Yeah, I think that's probably, if I was him, that's the argument I would raise. I'd say, hey, look, I'm on Team Humanity, and I want to provide, as a role model, the idea that students at the University of La Crosse, Wisconsin La Crosse, can have healthy adult relationships. Did he go too far? I mean, yeah, I don't think you, as a dean of a university, should be posting pornographic videos on the internet publicly. But I don't think he was using his real name. And it wasn't intended to be found. But yeah, I guess if you compare this to like Claudine Gay and some of those Ivy League deans, he was fired for this, and he's male, of course. But if you're a black Ivy League dean like Claudine Gay accused of plagiarism, your job is totally secure. All right, that's it. I'll leave you be. I'll probably stream later tonight. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thanks for watching Command HQ.